Hello everybody, it is I, your friendly neighborhood INFP, and even though my hair is a colossal mess, we are back at it with another tier list of low effort because sometimes you don't want to use big brain power to do some other stuff, and it's just, easier to make certain content this way. Plus, tier lists and pretty little pictures go burr. So in this video, we're going to be talking about which MBTI types get along with INFPs the best and which ones are essentially do not. And this is going to be based off of my own experience and my own understanding and my own, what I've seen based from online interactions and everything. So because it's going to be based on all of that, it is going to be largely my opinion, but you might learn something from this, or you might not, all depending. So, the first one that we'll just get right out of the way is ENTJ. Now, technically, they should be somewhere in the middle here. If you haven't figured it out, ENTJs are my favorite. I wouldn't say they're my favorite MBTI types. I'm really attracted to ENTJ, so they're like the ones that I'm mostly romantically attracted to out of all the types, and that probably makes more sense. But from what I've seen from online, from what I've seen from constant discussions from other INFPs and other ENTJs, whether it be on the Facebook forums or group whatevers, or on Twitter, or on Reddit, or on Tumblr, or large majority of those things, it is a very hit or miss system. It's basically, you can either get really well along with them, like you can mesh and they could even be S tiers, or you have a really hard time with them. And because they could either be way up here in S, depending on where they stand and how much they like the INFP opposites attract type of switch, or whether or not they're in a kind of healthy state, or if they, depending on how they've been brought up, what biases they were taught to believe, and all of that. I'm going to put ENTJ in C tier simply because it is a massive hit or miss with them. You honestly, you're either going to have a great time or you're going to have a bad time. That's all there is to it. And because it's a very hit or miss, I'm putting them kind of in the middle of the road. So, next type is the ENFJ. I have seen nothing but praise for ENFJ and INFP friendships and relationships. I'm going to put them in A tier. I have not myself fully experienced an ENFJ type of relationship. The ENFJs I've known are typically easy to get along with. I get along with them very quickly, very swimmingly. They are one of the best types I personally believe that an INFP gets along with. I see the similar rhetoric across the internet. Now, there are a few ENFJs who say that they have had a hard time with INFPs, and I do see several other ENFJs trying to figure out how to get along better with INFPs. But by and large, it is from what I've seen online and the discussions that I've gone on to on forums and all of that, it seems to be a heavily idealized friendship or romantic match, which is why I'm putting them into A tier. Now, ENFP. They're going all the way up into S tier immediately. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but when an ENFP and an INFP meet, there's this weird chemistry that happens instantly. It's like we get each other. One sure has more energy than the INFP, but it's this weird chemistry that comes with like trying to it happens. It's hard to explain because like you could be thinking of some random thing and then the ENFP vocalizes that thing you're thinking of and you're both like, hey, so this is like one of those very like synchronatic, weird, mind-ready, super friendshipy types. Like probably the extroverted type that an INFP will immediately get along with the best is going to 100% be an ENFP from my experience, from what I've seen and all of that. INFPs and ENFPs get along like a fish in a pond or whatever analogy you want to go with. So yeah, like the chemistry that happens, the mind reading and the vocalization and like knowing what each other is thinking and the references that each other pick up on almost instantly. It is like almost every ENFP and INFP can attest that it is a blast being around other ENFPs and or INFPs depending on the type you are with. Now, next up we have the INFJ. This one is interesting. I am going to put, oh my goodness. Based on experience, based on what I've seen online, I'm going to put them with the ENFJ. I personally have struggled trying to understand INFJs, but I've also had like really great conversations with INFJs. So I guess it's a hit or miss into what kind of INFJ you end up meeting. Typically, because INFPs and INFJs are often mistaken for being one another, a large part of that is that like how easy they can seem to be the other type. And because of that, like, and INFJs can also seem to be ENFJs, especially when they're doing the whole social out there socializing thing. But like with the INFPs, because they can be so utterly similar, I'm going to put them into A tier, but it's not like the levels of ENFP in my mind, which is why I'm not putting them into S tier, because there isn't that same level of synchronicity that happens between an INFP and an ENFP that happens between an INFP and an INFJ. Which brings us to the next point, the INFP. Obviously, S tier, you're going to get along with your own type far better than other types because your own type understands you the best. I still believe that ENFPs rule supreme here, and this is where I would essentially have where I would put the INFPs, because we are the same type, we have the same kind of understanding. Now, yes, it could be absolutely horrible, and like two INFPs could go at it like cats and dogs entirely. But from my experience, INFPs tend to get along really well with other INFPs due to that similarity of nature. And then, of course, you've got the ENFP, which even more so. Probably due to their extroverted nature. Next up, we have the INTJ. I'm going to put them above the ENTJ, and INTJ will give, from my observations, from going on, like lurking on group posts and reading forums, and just going across the years that I've seen from the interactions and like interviews and everything, INTJs are also like ENTJs, they kind of hit or miss, but they're more lenient towards INFPs. They're more lenient to, like, I guess due to like the introverted nature and perhaps Phi being higher in the stack, and like it's this kind of like a little bit of a better understanding or a little bit of a better leniency that an INTJ will have with an INFP. They'll find them amusing in some way or another. And like the friendships between INTJs and INFPs are Apparently really good from what I've seen people talk of them. But once again, it could also be absolutely horrible, and it almost seems like there is really no in between. But I would put them above the ENTJ because I have seen them being more lenient and accepting of INFPs than ENTJs are. Next up, we have the INTP. I'm going to put these guys in the S tier. The reason I'm putting the INTP in the S tier is based on own personal preference, and because of what I've seen online. INTPs and INFPs get along really well. INFPs and INTPs also one of those types that can get easily confused for being one or the other. They have a lot of the same interests, a lot of the same thought patterns, but in different ways. They have sometimes similar focus depending on the environment and where they're at. But there's this kind of curiosity with the INTP that wants to know more about the INFP, and then the INFP just generally getting along with the INTP. Like, I have seen a lot of friendships between INFPs and INTPs, more so than INFPs and ENFJs or INFPs and INFJs. Maybe because ENFJs and INFJs are a lot rarer. That could be the case. But regardless, INFPs and INTPs, from what I have seen, experienced, and know, tend to get along pretty well. Like, they're high up there. They're not like, you know, at the front of S tier, but they are up there. ENTP. Oh, this is going to be interesting. I honestly don't know which one of these areas the ENTP would be. I'll put them in B for now and probably keep them there. ENTPs are they can be the people who like to push buttons to see how you're going to react, to cause drama just to see what will happen, to experiment, to be really fast talkers, to be curious about everything. And so I see them being more curious about INFPs, but probably would get annoyed with their nature. From what I've seen online, ENTPs typically enjoy, from what I've seen, mocking INFPs more so than, like, in the traditional sense, getting along with them. But in the same token, ENTPs are also, people will say, well, they're making fun of you because they like you, but there's a kind of disconnect there. And a lot of, like, ENTPs that I've seen, also on group posts and all of that, have essentially had this, either they love INFPs or they hate INFPs, or they're indifferent about INFPs. It's just whatever grabs their fancy at that moment, and if an INFP's personality grabs their fancy, then yeah, they'll gravitate towards that, but if it doesn't, they'll be like, ugh, those people. So that's why I'm going to kind of put them in the middle of the road. They're not, like, kind of as cat and dogs as ENTJs and INFPs can be, or even, like, as good of a power couple as an INFP and ENTJ could be. But they're also far more, I would say, probably energetically indifferent most of the time as they go about their business. So, next up we have the ESTP and the INFP. Okay, where would I put you? Surprisingly, I haven't met a lot of people, and there aren't a lot of ESTPs that give their thoughts about INFPs online that I've seen. So this one's a little bit hard but based on own personal experience, I'm going to put them in the B tier. They would probably want to try and grab the INFP out of their comfort zone. They're typically very chill to begin with. They can be, like, very indifferent as well. It's like, oh, cool, an INFP, yeah, whatever. I'll be friends with them. It's cool. That kind of nonchalant. And they can be like really good friends, but once again, there isn't that same level of connection that an INFP will have between those in the S and A tier, which is why I'm putting the ESTP in the B tier. But once again, I don't know, because I haven't seen it that often, what most ESTPs think of INFPs. ESTJs, oh, this is hard. ESTJs get confused by us INFPs. We do a lot of stuff in unconventional ways. We don't follow the norm. We don't follow the structure of society. We don't bend to certain rules. We often walk to the sound of our own drum. All of which confuse the ESTJ from my experience. Now, I'm not saying that an ESTJ and an INFP can't be a good couple, because there are great ESTJ and INFP couples out there. It's just generally from literally from what I hear from a lot of INFPs and from what I hear about ESTJs, even more so than the ENTJ, is that they generally don't tend to get along all that well, with some exceptions here and there, but it's not as bad as some other types, which we will be getting to. So yeah, I'm going to put ESTJ in the D tier. ISTP, this is, I am going to put them in C tier, mostly due to their indifference. ISTPs, from my experience, generally and honestly don't give two flying rats butts or floating watermelons about any of that kind of, if they make friends with an INFP, sure, whatever, fine. If they don't make friends with an INFP, sure, whatever, fine. They're not going to go out of their way to make friends with an INFP, and they're not going to go out of their way to not make friends of an INFP. It's just they don't, from my experience, from what I know, they generally don't care that much. If they make friends, sure. If they don't, sure, whatever. So yeah, that's why I'm going to put them in C tier, due to their large indifference about the whole matter. From my experience, it could be different for some people, but that has been how I have seen other ISTPs and the like. Next up, we have the ISFP. Going to put them in S tier simply because ISFPs and INFPs share the same function, phi, plus they have a lot of the same interests, plus they share different bits and pieces about themselves, plus there is a lot of mistyping that goes on between ISFPs and INFPs. A lot of people who are INFPs are actually ISFPs, and a lot of people who are ISFPs are might be an INFP or some other type. Because they have that phi understanding, they're going to obviously be able to understand the INFP perspective a lot better than an ENFJ or an INFJ will, in my experience, and thus you'll have a closer friendship between an ISFP and an INFP. And then of course you have C, which is very similar in some aspects to Ni, where C is the five senses spread outwards, and Ni gives the possibilities of what you can use with those five senses. It can just generally be a overwhelming experience, good experience for the both of them as friends. Next up, we have the ESFP. So the interesting thing I feel about ESFPs, mostly due to talking to a lot of them, is if they want to make friends with you, they will make friends with you. They don't care, and they will be the bestest of friends to you. They will drag you out of your comfort zone. If they like you, they like you. If they find you interesting, they find you interesting. If they want to drag you to go to a party, they will drag you to go to a party. If you think about friendships, a good example would be Joey and is it Joey and I want to say Zoe, but I'm not entirely. Joey and Zoe seem so very weird. Phoebe, Joey and Phoebe. I almost forgot her name. Like, if you think of Joey and Phoebe from the show Friends, that is the level of friendship between an ESFP and an INFP. It's very close. The energy of the ESFP and then like the INFP nature. It just like, if they happen to meet and if they happen to like each other and they happen to be friends, it's a very kind of energetic friendship, to say the least, which is why I'm putting them up into S tiers. And I feel like ESFPs are like that with like a lot of type. People give ESFPs a bad rep, mostly due to them thinking that they're just party people, which they're not. ESFPs are people. They like being around people. They like attention. They like, helping people out. They like being around and entertaining people, and essentially even being the center of attention and like taking care of some people if they're feeling down, or like trying to make people who are feeling down laugh. They're like very there. They're very energetic. And I feel like due to the Phi being the second nature, I feel like ESFPs and INFPs do get along really well, even though people tend to give ESFPs a really bad rep, which is unfortunate because they are absolutely fun people to be around. Next up, we have the ISTJ. What ISTJs have I... What has... I am going to put these guys into the B tier because I know at least 3 to 5 different ISTJ and INFP relationships, both online and offline. Somehow, some way, somewhere, the ISTJ got enamored with the INFP or vice versa, and they ended up as a couple. I personally like ISTJs as well. I like ISTJ characters on shows. I love their biting sarcasm as well. ISTJs have some of the best biting sarcasm I have ever had the pleasure to witness, and like in both shows and in reality. So I feel like this is a type that can get along really well with INFPs, but it's not like they're like immediately, INFPs, they suck. That has never been my experience from ISTJs, but they do wish that INFPs would focus a little more, if you would. Then we have the ISFJ. I feel like they would be an A tier. I have been around a lot of ISFJs. ISFJs and INFPs are also often mistyped. So a lot of INFPs are actually ISFJs, and a lot of ISFJs are, well, still probably ISFJs. They're one of the most common types out there. But from working with like several ISFJs, being around ISFJs, seeing ISFJs online and all of that, it's like a mellow relationship. It's not like going to be like super high and extreme and out there, but it's not going to be like super negative either. Mostly due to the ISFJs and the INFP's desire for harmony, which causes that to happen. But there isn't that same level of relationship that happens between those in the S tier and the INFP. And then lastly, we have the ESFJ. No other type have I witnessed for like myself personally and other INFPs out there. We typically tend to have a really hard time with ESFJs, and ESFJs in controversy tend to have a really hard time with us. Now, I have seen some people say, what are you talking about? ESFJs and INFPs often make really good friends. And that has never been my experience, and maybe their experience is different, and that's fine. But there is a lot of drama and a lot of issues and a lot of, because the ESFJ thinks that the INFP needs to conform in a certain way, and the INFP who does not want to conform in a certain way will reject what the ESFJ wants for the INFP to do, and then they will go and butt heads with each other, and there's going to be like this. If they're not on the same wavelength, which most of the time they are not, it is going, and it often is, a hard relationship. Not that it's not a relationship that can and won't work, because it has worked for various ESFJs and INFPs, but I like the level of INFPs I have seen complaining about their ESFJ moms or their ESFJ aunt or their ESFJ some type of family member or friend is more than I have seen from them complaining about or talking about like the good parts of the ESFJ. Like, they're more going to complain about the issues they're having with their ESFJ friend or family members than they are going to be talking about how well they get along. But that's just my personal experience. That's just what I personally have seen over the years. It could be different for other people, and that's fine. But yeah, that's what I've seen. And yeah, that is going to be it for this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.